Okay, so it's 5:31, so let's get started. Can the city clerk call the roll, please?
Councilmember Chow is not yet at the dais. Councilmember Sinks.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Paul. Mayor Scharf.
Here. Okay, so the first item is oral communications, where any member of the public can speak on any item not on the agenda, and we can take no action on any oral communications item at this time because it's not agendized. However, the staff, it can be referred to the staff for either a future agenda item or to handle whatever the matter is. So do we have any speaker cards?
No cards, Mr. Mayor.
Great. So we are on to the first item, review the progress on fiscal year 2019 to 20 city work program and provide any input to staff. So let's have the staff report.
First, I'd like to thank City Council and staff for being here tonight. This is going to be a little start of a little different process. So the process for us is going to be one that integrates eventually our work program and dovetails right into a budget process, which is, I think, what council requested of me. Given that it's brand new for everybody, we're all kind of trying to figure it out. So be patient and forgiving of each other. This is going to be an interesting process. It is definitely segmented into certain phases. So what you did last year is probably going to be cut up into little different pieces. So this piece today is simply to go over the 1920 work program. You will see items that we have identified as completed, items that are work in process but will complete by the end of the fiscal year, and those items that will not be completed by the end of the fiscal year or have been put on hold for whatever reason. City staff and I are here to answer any of those more detailed questions, should there be questions that come up. But the idea here is to then roll that right into your goal setting for the 2021 fiscal year, and take anything that's not going to get complete in the 1920 fiscal year and put it at the top of your list for the following, so you can consider it with the new items coming in. Does that seem to make sense so far? What you will end up with, hopefully, will be a one-year work program with a 2-year budget planning cycle and a 10-year CIP look ahead, so that you're always kind of rolling forward and aware of what might be happening in an upcoming year. So that is the goal, and hopefully we meet that with tonight. So tonight, I'm asking council to keep it really high level. We have a summary, of course, of the entire work program. The details are right in front of you, but hopefully the presentation helps you kind of take a look at what we've completed per section. So let me take my, this is not working. Gotcha. It just defines the work program. I think everybody knows what the work program is. Last year, what I saw was less goal setting, but more project setting during the goal setting period. So what I'd like to do is make sure that we review these work program items with the idea that this is what will go under your goals. You all have goals. You've talked to me throughout the time that I've been here. So at the end, I'll be summarizing those, and you guys can agree or disagree on whether or not I've got them right or not. Or you can add and delete. New projects and initiatives added throughout the year will affect the ability and have affected the ability of the staff to complete the city work program as established previously. Ideally, this is a very conceptual picture or depiction of the work that goes on in the city. A good portion, the majority of the work that goes on is all operational, meaning we have ongoing operations that maintain the trees, provide services to the community, review people's projects, to add a number of things. Then there's a certain portion that is the work program that the council sets every year, special projects. And then there's this little internal focusing time where we would like to look at process improvements, gaining efficiencies, maybe taking out things that were put in place for some reasons years ago and we need to take them out, that can help speed us up on some of our internal processing. I would like to do this, though. If you notice the dotted line on the slide there, that's where how big I think our internal focusing time is as a staff is, and I would like to increase that a bit this coming year so we can really focus on some things internally. Does that make sense? Okay. So first, in the section that we call Smart City, we've completed the wireless upgrade in the public space. We have two pieces of what's in progress, things that will complete by the end of the fiscal year, and things that are multi-year, so we'll be finishing the phase that's appropriate for 1920. The wireless master plan is in progress, and the public safety surveillance support is also in progress and will likely finish by the end of the fiscal year. A multi-year item of note is the municipal water system. And on hold is the 5G Smart City Public-Private Partnership Agreement. Is there any questions that you might have about the Smart City category? Great. Community livability. This is the majority of our work, the majority of our work fell into this category this year. We did a shuttle bus survey. We had the homelessness support, report that was due. The Regnart Creek analysis, Regnart Road analysis and maintenance, the REACH code work. So you're well aware of some of the things that we've already completed this year. And in progress are incentives to build ADUs. You know where we are with the revision of the tobacco policies for the city. And of course, you know where we are with Lawrence Mitty. Are there any questions about these items? Okay. What's also in progress are use of the athletic fields, which I know is a hot topic. We've brought that in-house, by the way. A consultant was going to do the work, but we brought it back in-house. Green Building Code local amendments, and the dark sky policy. And by the way, these are all numbered to line up with the big spreadsheets that you have, so it should go in order. These are the multi-year items in community livability. I'll just call your attention to the shuttle bus pilot program implementation, the VIA shuttle. The Parks and Rec strategic plan is coming soon to council. Let's see. And then regional transformative transit projects. Obviously, we wouldn't finish any single one of those in this fiscal year, but it's a multi-year effort. On hold in community livability is Heart of the City plan, Performing Arts Center on hold, updating the municipal codes to incentivize electric vehicle charging, and then kind of ongoing and what might appear more in operations for next time, teen engagement, traffic calming efforts throughout the city, and study sessions on Valco.
Question.
Sure.
The Performing Arts Center, it says that it's on hold, but given that it's tied to the Valco specific plan, shouldn't that be canceled at this point? Or is there some time point in the future that we could be anticipating where it would be active again? I can't think of one.
We should cancel it, but we really wanted council to see it before we do anything with it.
To
and
see
I think
what,
you're right, it was connected with the specific plan.
You wanted council to see?
That it's here and that we will cancel it when appropriate.
Okay, I mean, I don't know what it's tied to right now.
Nothing.
That would,
You're right.
okay.
We just didn't want to let go of it, though. You know what I'm saying?
So should we ask questions now for each section?
Sure.
So, is that going to work? Okay. So for the use of athletic fields, it says in progress. how do we know how much progress there are and when it's going to come to the council? Because I am not sure I'm aware of how much progress there has been.
So as the city manager indicated, we took the project back in-house. We do have the expertise to develop an athletic field policy. Staff has done that, and we have a meeting set up for the first week of March with all the field user groups, the soccer groups, baseball, softball groups. And after that, we will take it to the Park and Rec Commission. You will be receiving it by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
We didn't think we needed to spend the $30,000 for a consultant when we have the expertise in-house
Okay.
to do this
So-
work. So we're moving forward with it.
So the stakeholder groups are all the athletic sports teams.
Correct.
How about residents? I think the reason we have this policy that we currently don't rent out any field use for Sundays is because residents need it. So how are we reaching out to residents? So that will be part of the outreach?
And that will be part of the outreach when we take it to the Park and Rec Commission, that we will make sure that the public is well notified of that, and that they will be the ones that get to enact a policy.
Okay, great. So then the ongoing, so under the category ongoing, it says that these items will not be included in future work programs, as they will occur as part of ongoing operations. That would mean we won't get updates on the programs that we have. How are we going to get annual updates on these ongoing programs? And why is the study sessions on VALCO an ongoing program?
Because they could be done, even if you put them in the operations, council can request reviews of anything at any time. I mean, those to me seem like they're ongoing efforts, and that staff can take care of them, and they're just ongoing. For example, traffic calming and enforcement, what we would do is establish the budget line we've been talking about, move forward, and just implement those as we go. Unless council asks for an update at any point.
Okay, I think I really applaud you for trying to attempt a new process, especially this update of work program. I think this is really nice. We have a check that what we have done, how much more to be done for this year. And then, but if everything that's operational and from the chart, that would be 60% of everything the city does. It seems like what kind of mechanism do you envision that we will be able to get updates and provide updates to residents on these ongoing efforts?
Well, if
Like
there's some,
team engagement, like the traffic calming.
if there's some project or some effort that you want updates on, you can either ask for them, or we can somehow hold them separate so you can see them for a while.
But it
separate
will
from
be on
operations.
demand basis. I don't think we should have an on demand, because that means when people might remember. So I'm wondering, is there an ongoing way that we could provide or get updates on these ongoing efforts that the staff is busy working on, but we don't know, the residents don't know. So how do we
Yeah, we can-
have better communication on
We can figure out
a lot of things that the staff actually have done?
if these are a particular,
Yeah.
go ahead, Roger.
Microphone.
Can you hear me now? Oh, okay, you can hear me now. So for the CIP items, we have a CIP dashboard on our website, and we can maintain the web pages for any one of these projects that you'd like to see, and so almost in real time we could report out as to what the status of the different projects are. Similar to like what we have for our bike and ped projects. But as the city manager mentioned, if there's anything specific that you'd like to see or any frequency you'd like to see, we could do that separately. But these are things that we would be doing and reporting out as just part of our normal portion of work.
So if there are certain topics that are of import to the council to hear certain updates on, you can tell us what those things are, and we can certainly keep them in front of you.
So I guess I don't want this to be on demand. For example, team engagement. What exactly we have been doing? I think we have team activity boards, which most people don't even know about. And I don't even know when they will have the next period, what's the duration. We have a lot of very good team programs that we don't really get the regular updates about. And traffic calming and enforcement. That's the most important issue in Cupertino, but I don't think we have ever gotten an update on all the efforts the city are doing. So I'm wondering, could we have a mechanism to provide regular updates
We can
of
do that.
different fields?
Absolutely.
That's
We can
ongoing
Yep,
operations.
we can do that as we do in the items of interest. We also do it in the scene. For example, the last VIA update went in the items of interest so everybody can see it. But if there are certain things that are important, we will make sure we.
It's very scheduled. So like this kind of 6-month updates, here is accomplishment for each area in the 6 months.
Okay, we'll take
that
that as
might be
feedback
nice.
and find a different,
Yeah.
a non-on-demand way to provide updates. Okay.
Thank you.
We move now into financial sustainability. You all know we finished the stormwater ballot initiative. We're working on the BMR linkage fees. Let's see. That's about it here. The internal audit function, of course, which the city is being lauded for, which is good. And then if you take a look at the in-progress multi-year items, considering policies to implement for economic development strategic plan, all underway, but kind of in pieces between years. And then one canceled item is the modernized business tax and analyze potential revenue measures. Into the next session, public engagement.
Go back. Did we want to cancel that? I thought we were putting the consideration of a business tax on hold, but I didn't think we were canceling it.
Okay, we can put that on hold. We also have some other revenue measures too.
Christina, go.
Yeah, so what we were looking at is rolling that into number 5 above, the public infrastructure financing strategy, trying to look at all tax measures when we bring that back. And just, I think, next month is when we have it scheduled to bring back that. We'd bring back that as a potential proposal with pros and cons to each tax measure or financing strategy that we're bringing back to you. So it will actually be rolled up into 5, which will be focused not necessarily just on the business tax, but on more broader, different set of taxes that the council could consider.
Okay, and I think some of this depends on the outcome of certain things that are on the ballot that would negatively affect our revenue and in the future, specifically with mitigation fees. So we might have to go back and look at the business taxes again because of that.
And that's what we're hoping to do with number 5
Okay,
in the
that's
near
fine.
future.
I object to canceling it. I think it's appropriate to stay on. I think it's appropriate for us to send a message that this is an important source of revenue, and I think we ought to call it out explicitly. If it's a sub-bullet on public infrastructure financing strategy, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, if you want to explicitly call it out under number 5, that would be acceptable, or just leave it in progress.
Fair enough.
I agree. I think at the time in 2018, the estimate was we might get $10 million a year from business tax, and we did. Then I think the council choose to go into negotiation with the biggest employer, and we did get almost $10 million on mostly bike path projects, but this project we won't get income unless they are finished, and so that means $10 million for maybe 3 years, and then nothing was for housing or other infrastructure. So we should keep the conversation going. So we should keep this item.
Right, and that was a one-time donation. It's not ongoing revenue that you can bond against.
Yep, we'll keep it up front.
We should also define what we mean by public infrastructure, because as it is before, a business tax that just goes to the general fund is much more flexible than anything that puts any degree of constraints on there. So if we're specifically defining public infrastructure as broadly as possible, that would help alleviate that issue. But under its current categorization, it gives us a lot of options. So I would be okay with a bullet point as well, but make sure that we have a clear idea of what public infrastructure is, such that it gives us as many options as possible in the future.
No, that's great feedback. Okay. Anything else on that one?
A question in terms of process. So right now we are doing updates, right?
Yes.
So I guess some items might jog, things we would like to work on for next year. Should we
Write them
save
down.
it?
No,
Save
write
it
them-
for next steps.
Yes.
Item, right?
Because it's going to be a whole nother hunk. I will review the schedule later, and then you'll have an opportunity to do that. And then you'll be able to see everything together.
So question, when you put these dollar amounts next to the items under estimated total budget, how were those budgets generated? And same question with regard to the number of hours. So I'm looking at the number of hours for some of these projects. I'm wondering where they come from.
So staff is asked to estimate. So for some of the items like internal audit, we kind of we're asking the experts in the industry, what do we see this coming in at? And they've given us a range, and so we pick a number that we think would be best suited based on the plan we think we're going to have. And so departments go through that similar process when they're looking at their item, whether that be in staff hours. What are the things that we think we need to complete? What are those steps? Who's going to work on them? And about how many hours do we think they're going to take to work on those projects? So
And do you have those support documentations? Because I feel like when I look at the number of hours for some of these items, I wonder, where those estimates are coming from and how they break down. So if each of the departments were asked to generate that documentation, so for instance, looking at one project for public records request, for instance, one could break it down to we'll be soliciting the vendors for X number of hours, interviewing, evaluating, the various types of software. This is how long it'll take to implement. And some of these, they're much more nebulous, but they seem to have a very large amount of hours associated with them. So I'll be asking about them later, but I'm just wondering whether there was a process. If there wasn't anything specific and written down, I'd like to request that in the future that we make those types of charts, basically to say,
Like how we estimate an effort in terms of hours and dollars.
right. I see some really significant projects, and it seems like there are reasonable number of hours in my opinion. So something like negotiating the library lease, I think is like a couple hundred hours. And
Which makes sense. Right?
important lease. That's a 30-year lease. And then there are other projects that I kind of wonder, how are we kind of auditing our time when someone submits a time estimate of, say, anywhere from 300, or even 1,000 hours? Is that being checked? Is someone kind of asking the question, well, is this a reasonable amount of time for this particular project?
Okay.
So it would be great, just to have support documents for those types of
Typically,
projects.
and these guys can correct me if I'm wrong, typically what happens is we'll take a look at how a similar project that we've done before, how it kind of timed out in terms of number of hours, and then we kind of just, try and do an estimate based upon previous experience.
Right.
So that's kind of how, in general, it's done, and then we kind of drive the dollars out of there based upon who's working on it.
Right. It would be great to get some clarity from our side as well, because a lot of times I don't think we have an idea of how much time particular projects take.
Right, yeah.
But, for the stuff that we're a little bit more familiar with, I think it can tend to be a little bit surprising in terms of the time estimates. So,
Totally get that.
all right, thanks.
Okay.
So another question. Under I think the first page of community livability, under completed, we have arts and culture festival programs. And I think one of the program goal is to provide 3 cultural events a year. So I suppose this will become an ongoing, one of the operation thing under ongoing.
Yes, they would become ongoing events that we would continue. Also, recently in the latest discussion with the Park and Rec Commission meeting last week, the Park and Rec Commission meeting is asking us to take a look not just at the summer programming, but the annual programming, and to make sure that we've spread some of these around to different parts of the city, different parks, and to have a little bit more robust, so we don't look at these solely in the summertime, but year-round. So we will be coming back to the commission with a plan in the next couple of months about all of these plans. But once these were done, yes, these specific programs will become ongoing.
So I guess the art commission, I think some members of the art commission also wish to get involved with this kind of program. I'm just wondering, now that it will be taken off the work program, but this kind of item could still be an ongoing item for some of the commissions.
There's a lot of items that we consider ongoing. The Big Bunny Fun Run and the Santa events and all those things are ongoing. They wouldn't be on a work plan, but we're going to do those every single year. And that's really the definition of the ongoing versus the work plan items.
Then the commissions will still be involved in designing those programs, or
They don't
not?
They actually don't design the program. They give policy about and influence about which types of programs to continue. Staff actually does the design work of the programs. The commission is an advisory body into what types of programming should go on. And in this case, I think they said that there should be more special events in certain areas or certain parks. And so that's how some of these come
what
around.
I mean is, for example, arts and culture, it's not designing, but then what type of arts, what type of culture program to offer. I suppose this is where the commission will be working with the staff.
Absolutely.
How would that work?
Absolutely.
Would
That's
that be part of their commission program?
Absolutely, that is the type of input that we look for from commissions. More theater arts, more painting arts, whatever it is. Let's try and focus in those areas, and then staff will take that information and then actually develop the programs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
A quick, so a couple of requests. So for public engagement and transparency, and thanks for articulating the difference between a work program item and an ongoing item. I think for the benefit of the public and the council, having an idea of what the ongoing work is would be a really good thing. And I would make that a request for the upcoming year, to have the departments generate something similar to this, but for what is ongoing work, so that we have an idea of what the city is doing. So we have an idea of kind of estimates and budget estimates for what's going on with our prospective work that we're considering adding to the workload. But I don't think there's any document anywhere in the city where a resident can take a look and go, okay, so this is where all of our tax dollars are going. This is where all the employee time is going.
So are you talking like an annual operating report?
Something like that, yes. Something similar to this, though. I wouldn't want it to get too granular in the details, because that could consume a lot of time.
I thought I did see a document like that from
There's a document like this. Yeah, I mean, if a template document exists, then it would be great to be able to bring that to the forefront. I mean, if it could be provided with, a relatively minimal amount of modifications. I just haven't seen that made available to the council and public over the last 5 years. Maybe it has to the council, and I'm just not.
It would make a lot of sense to kind of do that in conjunction with the budget, so you can actually.
Right.
here's what
I
you're-
thought there was a page in the budget that kind of
Talks about-
details all of that.
Yeah, it's actually, it's part of the budget message. The very front part of the budget, we cover what we've done in the previous year with those budget dollars that were allocated. So we kind of give the highlights of different things that we've been working on. And then we do a forward look on what we would like to accomplish with the current year's budget that we're asking you to adopt.
Right. So maybe drill down on that if it's on a web page. So when you click on it, you can
We can
see
take maybe one layer of
exactly
detail. to the-
right
Yeah,
where that category, where the money was spent.
I mean, we're not asking for every single hour of every single FTE, but to get a sense of these 200 FTEs, generally speaking, in planning.
Sure.
Are they working more on, permits, or are they working more on applications?
Yeah,
you
we
know,
can
or
make
a
an attempt to
combination of
take that
both?
and drill it down, maybe one level down, and take a look more
Yeah,
details.
if it's not too much, if we can have also like number of FTEs, how much budget for each operational item, that would be great. Like events program, how much would be the total budget?
The promise I will make is we'll take a look
So-
at getting some more detail. The more detail you want, the heavier administrative burden in the reporting, and it becomes pretty
But I
heavy.
assume you or every department head has certain table like
We
this.
will drill
right?
down to the level of detail that we can get to kind of easily. How's that?
Okay, like one thing people always ask after their cars are broken into is, why don't you hire more
Right.
deputies? And I don't think they have any idea how much each extra deputy actually costs. By the time you figure out the salary and the overhead and all that, I think they may have an unrealistically low view of what it actually costs.
Fully burdened, it's certainly a lot.
Right.
Right. John?
Here we are. Just to add to that thought, right? Sometimes adding more deputies isn't the most cost-effective way, right? It's more neighborhood watch,
Right.
Community programs, and these kinds of things that we may have ample deputies for. It's a matter of engaging the public to help the sheriff's department have more eyes on the street.
Gotcha.
So it sounds to me like it would actually be a work plan item, because it would not be a one-time view. It would be something that would be updated throughout the year. So it seems to me that it would be a work plan item.
Or updated annually with the budget.
Well, I'm thinking, annually isn't quite enough. Quarterly, possibly.
Okay.
Annually, I mean, you have to wait a whole year to see what's transpired, as opposed to quarterly. It may not differ a lot quarter to quarter, but at least we're kind of staying current.
Well, we'll establish cadence and all that. We'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. Okay. Public engagement and transparency. The items that are in progress. Volunteer fair, the town halls that we established last year. Certainly the review of the current commissions, which has been gone through its second reading.
So someone at the mayor's meeting with the commissioners asked about the volunteer fair. Who did the person that organized that last year? Are they gone?
I don't know that.
I don't know, I don't know who the staff person was that organized it last year.
That's Colleen. Colleen
Oh.
Material.
Right. So we want to be sure that this doesn't fall through the cracks, because so it's Brian. Okay. When?
It says in May on the
In May. Okay.
Yeah.
Although we have been talking about moving it up to March to make it more effective in the future.
Yeah, March tends to be a lot windier. Just when you put up tents, they will tend to fly.
A lot of the volunteers that we get, and especially in Parks and Recreation or in library services or things like that, are college students, residents that have gone away to college. They want to come back. They want to look for summer jobs. Usually they're applying by spring break, so that we know that's going on. To have a volunteer fair before spring break would make much more sense, so everybody knows about the opportunities that are coming up in the summertime, and they can start applying for them either as volunteer positions or as part-time staff. So this year it is being planned for May. I would make the recommendation that it move up to maybe March in the future.
Yeah, I think either would work. Yeah, I mean, we initiated it 2 years ago after a really long hiatus, and I would even suggest trying to make this part of an ongoing project as opposed to putting it on a work plan. But it sounds like it's stabilizing pretty well, and I would only say that it seems to me that people tend to think more about volunteer opportunities for the summer a little bit closer to summer. But maybe this will help, kind of encourage people not to procrastinate. It's just that around when we get requests for internships, I've always heard them at the very earliest around the May, and some people will ask in the middle of summer, but of course, there's very little you can do for people
Right.
if it's already in the middle of the break. But yeah, just to have it would be great. You know, it's nice that we're keeping it on an ongoing basis. I did have a question about the marketing project, and this was really, you know, I'm all for it. I think it's great to have, you know, the ability to brand ourselves and to make people, you know, proud of the city. It kind of goes to the idea of our logo. I think I'm not speaking inaccurately when I say that we probably do have majority sentiment, if not a unanimity on the council, to kind of, you know, have an appetite for, you know, reconsidering the Morion.
Here.
You know, and over the years, you know, it's kind of grown on me personally, but I mean, you know, I know that there are certain, you know, associations with it, but that's not really the main point I was looking at for the marketing project. Well, first of all, the budget is $5,000, which I think is a little bit lean if we're really trying to create a suite of items to brand Cupertino with. The other part of it is that 750 hours have been allocated, and I would be all for that, except that's almost half a year of someone's work. And so I'm just wondering, with that, you know, healthy of an allocation of time, is there a plan to be able to, you know, deliver on this? So I mean, just this number of hours allocated really caught my eye. So.
It was 750 hours and $5,000 of
Right.
something else?
Right. I mean, with 750 hours, I mean, I would think just by the nature of the amount of work that you're doing, you would need more of a budget for that. But if, yeah, Brian, if you could.
Podium's up, working now.
Sorry. Yeah, great questions. And my apologies, I don't have the information in front of me. I just came from jury duty. But the 750 sounds like it might have been a typo. It might have been 75 hours because we were just looking into what a store would look like and then working with the commission, Fine Arts Commission, on some items, swag items that could be identified either for the store or to give away to Sister City and Friendship City policies. You're correct, the $5,000, that does sound low. I thought it might have been $50,000, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Maybe
great
we put
questions.
the
It
zero
sounds
in
like
the
the
wrong
opposite.
place.
That's what it sounds like, yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Because I noticed that the art in unexpected places item was 10,000, and it was great to have a couple murals being considered. But if we have that kind of budget for something like that, which is also being done by Fine Arts, I think a similar budget would be good. But, you know, if we're saying that it's, you know, in the range of 10 to 50, great. But certainly at a 750-hour allocation,
Right.
I mean, I would be imagining maybe we're looking to plan out a dedicated employee on a half-time basis, maybe from like, you know, 1 to 5 every day somewhere, which would be really interesting. But I think that's something that we would want to know about.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, yes. And so we'll look at that and make sure we correct it if it's in fact an error.
Okay.
And if it's not, then we'll come back and explain why
Thanks.
the difference. The mayor had something. Did you have something? Okay.
So first follow up on what Darcy just said. On this page, so it's good that the Art Commission is working on this project, but the page doesn't list the Art Commission for the marketing project.
It's under project objective.
Yeah, I think department, I think usually you guys are listing department and commissions that are working, right? So should we list under department heading all the department and commissions that are working on the project, or are we not doing that?
So we will be including a column for commissions and committees in the upcoming work program.
Yeah.
We will be including
Or
that.
it could be combined with the department, so it's more compact. And so this item, there are two items there. One is the Sister City gifts. The other is potential maybe mug, Cupertino mug that people can, a Cupertino store, right?
Well, there would be, why they were put together was that there was thought that there would be overlap, that anything the Fine Arts Commission came up with that could possibly given away as swag to sister cities or friendship cities or just delegations in general could then be identified for the city store.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So one thing regarding the public engagement, I remember there was an item about OpenGov or something's a kind of two-way online forum to replace Nextdoor. And I don't see an item here. Is that still being worked on?
Well, that might have been a work program item maybe a year ago or so. We do have Open City Hall.
Yeah.
And there has been some discussions with them about possibly doing that. We could have updates in the future. It doesn't seem like it would be able to be up to snuff to what some of the expectations are we've heard from council at this point. So we still have to review that.
I kind of remember early last year, Bill was already working on this, so it didn't work out. Can you give an update on why it didn't?
Yeah, so we've had Open City Hall for quite a while now, and we've been doing mostly surveying through them. They had let us know that there was a possibility of opening up to have some type of next door feel. However, when we looked into it, I don't have all the details right now, and if the city manager would like me to, I can put together a small report later about exactly. It didn't seem to fit the council members' comments and hopes we had heard about them needing something that was open publicly all the time where people could post whatever they wanted. It didn't seem to be able to fit that, so we need to look at something else.
So then anything else you have found that could provide similar thing? Or is that not an item, so no effort has been
I wouldn't say
put
there's
on
no
that?
effort's been put on, but it isn't a work item. I don't know if we're discussing the work program right now, but I don't believe that it's on here.
Well, if you look under operational efficiency number 3, rollout of OpenGov platform. So it sure sounds like
That's something different.
So,
Right, it
when
says
we-
it's completed, so where is it?
When we looked at that was more of rolling out of dashboards and stories for OpenGov, and we actually did do the first quarter budget as an OpenGov story, which is an interactive budget where you can go in and click further into the detail. But that specific item was not related to OpenGov.
Open City Hall. Where it gets complicated is that OpenGov owns Open City
Okay.
Hall now.
Okay, and I think we have to be a little careful about having an open forum where anybody can post based on other things that have transpired recently with our Facebook page. Because once it's open, there's all these First Amendment issues that we have to be careful about. So I hadn't thought about that earlier until we've seen some other issues recently.
Yeah, it's just every item here, we don't get a lot of two-way communication, which is what we really need. I think COSD used a new tool. What was it called? I don't know. Anyone know?
Well, we'll look into, we'll follow up with this
That
item.
provides
and-
more interactive.
Yeah, we don't have to solve this right
yeah.
now, but yeah, if we
That's
could
kind
look
of-
into
okay.
to something.
Well, I'd raised this 3 years ago, and the reason is I found Nextdoor to be a cesspool, and I didn't think they did a very good job policing content. I was upset that there was, people could launch personal attacks there. The point of the OpenGov product, which is called, what did you call it?
Open City Hall?
Open City Hall, that I thought we had agreed we were going to go do at some point in the past city manager administration, was to have a forum where residents could weigh in, but it would be moderated, and not by staff, and not by council members, but actually by the company, right? So if they deemed a post to be against their rules of engagement, which were published to everybody, they would be taking down such posts. But other than that, this is not a censorship means. It was simply a means to, prevent personal attacks and abuse and that sort of thing. So
Right.
again, not moderated by the city.
I mean,
but
can the city
moderated by this
attorney
neutral third party.
comment on this? Because, even if a
to
private
me, that-
company did it, there could be free speech issues.
So to my mind, though, that was
Facebook
the,
is
the right kind of
moderating.
forum for the city to be engaging in effective dialogue.
I think we'd certainly have to look into if that's the goal, whether it's able to be accomplished with the city contracting through a third party. I think there are some First Amendment issues, and it might not be possible to moderate it in that manner. But this is getting into sort of a complex legal analysis of whether it's the city doing the moderator or the city's contractor, and whether that can somehow allow more restrictions on speech than the city itself would be able to have. So if council wanted to move forward with that, that would be an analysis that the city attorney's office would conduct to determine.
Right.
how we
I
could
think we do need
set
that
this up.
because, we need to know, is it legal to remove totally off-topic posts by, people spamming the page, or is everything have to be allowed?
Yeah, and we've provided the public information officer guidance about this in the past for moderating the city's Facebook page, and once you open those city government pages up to public comment, it's very restricted on what the city can actually delete or not allow. That these are limited public forums. It can't be based on the content of the speech, and so really, the answer is usually allow more speech or don't allow any speech, and the
Right.
city needs to
if
make that decision.
So you can't delete something if it's not relevant to the subject being discussed.
That's a risky business, I would say.
Okay, right.
The one comment that I
company-
would ask is, as long as it was moved to a miscellaneous page as opposed to the content page, if it was Lehigh and the inputs are dealing with Lehigh, great. But if it's dealing with something else, it gets moved to a miscellaneous page. It hasn't been deleted, it just doesn't get categorized with the topics of importance.
That's a good idea.
Well, in fact, we have Open City Hall right now. I can go to it. The open topics are via Cupertino follow-up survey. So I think we have used it for some limited engagements in the past. And my understanding, right, is that I'm assuming there are other cities that use this technology, and I think, they're specifically engagement with respect. The rules don't go to content other than to, my understanding, other than to personal attacks.
Yeah, and I think it would just be an item that the city attorney's office would have to look into and look at the rules and and we can do
I'm in
that
favor.
if we want to
I
move
think
forward.
if we want to live in the 21st century, interacting with our residents on such a forum does make some sense.
So I'll
Just
tell
a
you that
comment
we'll take
that-
this item back and take a look at what we've done, provide a report.
I mean, we put out stuff on Nextdoor, and the problem is, right, we never get to see posts that aren't responses to our specific posts. So there are all kinds of issues that people want to comment on, lots of them. And the problem is, on Nextdoor, agencies don't have a right. I mean, the staffers don't. And if we happen to live in a neighborhood, we might get it and pass it on, but otherwise it goes into oblivion. So how do people think about that? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take this item back and take a look at it, and then if we don't find we have clear action, we'll put it on discussion for work program.
One comment, I think Facebook does moderate their post, right? So they have their own rules.
I don't think they do.
I think they do. I read the article that they outsource this to Philippines. There are people who do this specially. So I'm wondering maybe there are other similar social media that have more specific guidelines that maybe it will,
Maybe. We'll look into it, and we'll like to move the agenda on.
We should move on.
Yep. Okay, so operational efficiency, labor negotiations, which are once every 3 years, I think, were completed. The rollout of our OpenGov platform, workforce planning is underway. and our alternative commute pilot program for staff, all in progress to complete at the end of this fiscal year. More in progress is the marketing plan for Parks and Rec, and then some multi-year items. One of particular import is the Emergency Services Continuity of Operations Plan, and as soon as we get our emergency response person on deck, that is their top priority to get that completed. Just as a reminder, there's evacuation plans and things that are incorporated into that plan.
So are we recruiting for that now, or
Yes.
what's that?
That loss was experienced late last fall. Then we hit the holidays and the break, so it closes, and we have interviews possibly even early next week. But we're stepping on that. And then we have on hold the new City Hall design and the interim City Hall design, and a cancellation of additional ERP modules.
I wonder whether the interim city hall design should be canceled altogether. Not necessarily the new city hall design, but
The interim one?
the interim one, because we don't know whether it's going to be necessary, right? I mean, just depending on what the city hall plans are. And we do have money allocated for it. I think it's a pretty significant amount, about $500,000. So, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to maintain that, especially given the fact that our primary financial plan for the city hall is no
It's
longer
shifted, perhaps.
right. Well, may have shifted.
Also
I don't
has
know,
a-
just something to think about
It also has 1,000 hours moved to it, so,
for the interim city hall design.
Yeah.
yes.
Right. So maybe just an update on what the city hall options might be. I don't know.
Sure,
I mean,
we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost time to do that. Okay. Public-private partnerships, art in unexpected places is completing this fiscal year. And then some multi-year things, as you probably know, the library lease, which is not a short effort. The Small Business Development Center and Cupertino's Visitor Center.
Could we back up just to the art in
Sure.
unexpected places and being complete, but wouldn't it be kind of an ongoing at a very low level such that we'd like at least one, maybe two new art in unexpected places around the city? I mean, art
Kind of ongoing.
Yeah, art in itself, once you've seen it, twice you've seen it, three times, you're kind of looking for what's different, what's new. And to say it's complete, it seems to me we just really lost out a lot on being able to put these new things up.
If I may, Ben Food, Director of Community Development. So Arts Commission has placed this at a high importance for the next year's WIL program.
Good.
So the reason it's reflected as completion is because this fiscal year, the project is completing. Next fiscal year, we'll also have a different set, so you'll see that appear again. So every year, will come back as a work program item for each year. Yeah, as opposed to saying it's in progress or ongoing, it's kind of misleading, like we haven't finished this year's project or program. So,
Great. Good point.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have several public comment cards that we should actually, I think we should stop and do them now.
Oh,
Just
okay.
so the students don't have to sit here through the whole
Okay.
presentation.
That's the last page. I think.
What, are we almost done with this? Or?
This is the last page.
That was the last
of
page.
Oh,
presentation
great, so it's
anyway.
perfect.
Perfect timing.
Okay. Okay, so everybody gets 3 minutes. You don't have to take all 3 minutes. So I'll call your names. First is Sanat Singhal, followed by Gwyn Azar, followed by Allison D'Souza. Welcome. Welcome. Sahat, did I pronounce your name right?
Sanat, yeah.
Sanat, okay, I thought that was an H. Okay.
Hello, Honorable Mayor and esteemed council members. I would like to start by thanking the City Council for passing strong reach codes to position Cupertino as a climate leader. And I would also like to thank Mayor Scharf for meeting with the Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team last year and agreeing to support the addition of Green Mondays and single-use plastic waste reduction policy to the official council work program. The Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team is here to present about these two initiatives, as well as 4 other initiatives, which include climate restoration and carbon negative building materials, public education workshops, summer sustainability internships, and water conservation efforts. So I would like to start by speaking about Green Mondays. Green Mondays is a multifaceted program which features one environmentally responsible plant-based meals on Mondays, and educating residents on the impacts of climate change and their food choices. So Green Mondays is a program that would allow us to educate our residents about food choices, because as some of you might know, food and the meat production industry creates more greenhouse gas emissions than all of the transportation sector in the whole world combined. That's more than all the planes, trains, cars, boats in the whole world combined. So we, in the city council meetings, I've seen a lot of emphasis being placed on transportation, which is obviously really important, but the topic of food choices is almost never addressed or touched upon, and I think this is a really important way that we can educate residents and make a real impact with our policy. And this is a way that we can directly influence this industry, because all of us have the power to choose what we eat, of course. And so this policy has already been implemented in Berkeley and Emeryville, and as Cupertino is positioning to be a climate leader, I believe that we should take the next step in implementing this as well. And this would involve things like getting the city themselves to eat plant-based meals on Mondays, and city staff who work, as well as working with restaurants and grocery stores and other entities in Cupertino to put up posters and other educational tools to inform residents about the impact of their food choices, as well as implement like featuring vegan food or plant-based meals on Mondays in restaurants, and like getting the restaurants to add vegan food if they don't already have that. And this would be a very important step to moving forward and positioning Cupertino as a climate leader. Thank you. I would like to now give the stage to Gwen, who would talk about plastic reduction.
Great. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Gwen Azar. I'd like to again thank you, Mayor Scharf, for expressing your support for single-use plastic reduction. So given the current infrastructure, accounting for and recycling single-use plastics is difficult and ineffective, and thus a concerning amount of plastic waste accumulates on our streets, in our oceans and waterways, and in the landfill. In fact, 25% of waste produced in California consists of single-use food and beverage containers. And although important, emphasis on disposal belies a more important and immediate necessity, which is reduction. Most plastic food accessories, such as straws, stirrers, condiment packets, etc., are unrequested and unnecessary. This wasteful free distribution of plastic detrimentally affects our health, wildlife, and world. We need to make reduction efforts that reflect the caring and environmentally conscious community we live in. Cupertino has stepped up to strong REACH codes, yet our policies regarding single-use plastics are lacking when compared to our neighboring cities. Palo Alto, San Francisco, and Berkeley have already enacted policies prohibiting the distribution of plastic food or accessories unless they're requested, and we should follow in their footsteps. For example, Berkeley has passed an ordinance which limits the free distribution of single-use plastic utensils and other accessory foodware. This means that customers are in control of their single-use waste consumption, which drastically raises the awareness around the consumption of these products. And similar to how we have to pay for bags in the grocery store, in Berkeley, customers are charged 25 cents for disposable cups. They also require that all disposable containers and utensils are biodegradable in terms of their city composting. Such adjustments would have huge impacts on the cleanliness and environmental impact of our city, and we can drastically improve on this through city policy. The wasteful use of single-use plastics when there are so many viable alternatives is unnecessary and can be greatly improved upon in 2020. We urge you to continue with us in the reduction of our city's single-use plastics by adding this to your work plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next is Allison D'Souza.
Me and Allison are going together, so.
Great, okay.
Yeah. Great.
And you're Brandon?
Yeah, I'm Brandon.
Okay.
Yeah. So, hi, council members. I'm Brandon, a student at Cupertino High School and a member of the Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team, and I'm here today to speak to you on the replacement of lawns with native plant gardens. So, as I'm sure you all have seen, the majority of homes here in Cupertino have like vast, lush lawns, and the lawn has almost become an icon of sorts of the American dream embedded into a suburban lifestyle. But when you look at this patch of green from an environmental perspective, the lawn suddenly becomes a lot less green. There are a multitude of issues that lawns introduce. For starters, many lawn owners utilize a wide arsenal of chemicals to improve their lawn growth, ranging from pesticides to fertilizers. But these chemicals don't stay on the lawn, and more often than not end up polluting and poisoning our waterways and other parts of our environment. Speaking of water, lawns are massive water hogs, using thousands of gallons of water every year per household. Pair this with the fact that many people who keep lawns tend to overwater them, and you've got yourself a massive drain on Cupertino's water supply. On that note, I'd like to thank the council for your strong environmentally friendly policy decisions so far regarding water usage in Cupertino, and I hope that trend will continue via your support of our solution to the lawn issue, native plants.
Hello, my name is Allison, and I'm a current student at De Anza College. As Brandon expressed, lawns have adverse effects on the environment and also have proved to be costly with their need for vast amounts of water, fertilizer, labor, and fuel. In fact, according to the EPA, in a single hour of use, an average lawnmower pollutes the air as much as 34 cars do driving in a single hour. Today, I'd like to speak about the benefits of replacing lawns with native plant gardens. Native plants are indigenous to an area and not introduced by humans, making them biologically diverse. Sanctuaries for wildlife and in need of low maintenance or not at all, since they essentially grow on their own. Eliminating lawns and replacing them with native plants would dramatically reduce the need for fresh water by 30 to even up to 85%. But the benefits of transitioning towards native plant gardens in Cupertino do not only extend to reducing water usage, but would also decrease the use of pesticides and fertilizer and reduce pollution in our air and waterways. Implementation of such a program would encourage individuals in Cupertino to work towards a more sustainable lifestyle and future, and also set a standard for other cities to follow.
So, question for these speakers?
Sure, go.
Are you aware of the rebate programs that are already offered by Valley Water and the city?
So I'm aware of a few programs. So one of them is, I believe, we offer a rebate for people who connect gray water, like their gray water from their own homes to like their lawns, and like.
Well, there's that, but specific to the points you're making about lawns, the water district offers $1 per square foot, and the city offers a complement $1 on top of that, so it's $2 per square foot. So if you have a small patch of even 1,000 square feet, that adds up to some pretty significant savings. Are you advocating that we do something else?
I'm also advocating for a more education around this issue, right? So like I think a really key part of like public policy making, as well as making progress in terms of like environmental impacts, is making sure like our citizens are aware of these policies and of the benefits of like native plants. Okay. And so, like getting people to transition, getting homeowners to transition towards like native plants and away from lawns is more than just like paying them money to do so. It's also about making sure that they're aware of the environmental impacts that like their actions have.
Thank you.
And so
yeah.
that's part of what I wanted to talk
Okay.
about.
Yeah, I'd also like to suggest the city itself has converted a lot of lawn space around City Hall to a demonstration garden, and our public information officer and Public Works worked together with me when I was mayor a couple of years ago to kind of roll it out to the city. So we actually do have some pretty good informational outreach available on video. And then if you walk around, you're probably aware of this, but we have a lot of these placards up that actually tells people a lot of information about these types of native plant and types of gardens that you can be using in your own lawns as well.
So I think the city, maybe we could put on some seminars on how to actually do this. If you look at my house, the lawn is now covered with cardboard and wood chips and compost because the lawn is being killed over the next few months. And surprisingly, a truck came up, dumped the wood chips, no charge. The cardboard is no charge. The compost is no charge. And it's not as expensive as some people may think to actually do this if they're willing to do a little sweat equity on the whole project.
So yeah, like definitely on your note, Mr. Mayor, I think just increasing the awareness of these policies that the city already has in place would definitely help more homeowners and maybe convince more homeowners to make the transition away from like their current lawns towards native plant gardens.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, so next we have Annika Huang, followed by Sophia Wang.
Okay, hi, I'm Annika. I'm a student at Cupertino High School. And I'm also part of the Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team. Before I start, I'd like to thank Council for your efforts on implementing the all-electrification REACH codes and taking a big step towards making Cupertino's buildings more environmentally friendly. So as you may know, carbon dioxide levels are continuing to rise to unnatural levels, contributing to ocean acidification, global warming, and other detrimental effects. And recently, we've been setting records for the hottest summers almost every single year because of these accumulating greenhouse gases. This situation is even worse for California, Cupertino included, since the rising heat causes our annual wildfires that damage the air quality, leading to a variety of health issues, including asthma and heat stroke. But there are technologies out there today to remove the excess trillions of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So as a future environmental leader, Cupertino should adopt a carbon-negative concrete code to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Carbon-negative concrete is a concrete mixed with carbon dioxide, maintaining the structural integrity of normal concrete while also reducing the carbon dioxide and amount of cement used. The production of cement actually produces carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, so by combining the two, it can lessen the damage to the environment or even reverse it. Places like Marin County, also in the Bay Area, have already implemented the carbon-negative concrete codes. Just last November, Cupertino can use this opportunity to become one of the first in the nation to use this technology and lead the fight against climate change. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next is Sophia Wang. Oh, sure, go.
I'm sorry, quick question for Speaker. Where does the carbon come from in this type of carbon negative?
From the atmosphere.
Okay, so during the mixing of the concrete, there's supposed to be carbon dioxide pulled out of. So for the concrete that's being recommended, where does that carbon come from? Is it?
The carbon comes from the atmosphere.
Okay, so it's just part of the process, and that's okay.
So
All right,
are you
thanks.
sequestering CO2 inside the concrete? Is that
Yeah.
what's happening? Okay.
There's a limit to the amount of carbon dioxide used to maintain the structural integrity, but otherwise it works like normal concrete.
Great. I had never heard of this before.
I'll point out,
sorry.
maybe to help a little bit, that there are two different possibilities here. One is, as you suggest, there's sequestration. In Marin, the Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution to reduce the amount of conventional Portland cement in concrete by using fly ash and other things. So that's also an effective way. The chemical transformation that occurs when you take limestone and put it through a very hot kiln liberates a lot of CO2. On top of that, you have the CO2 in the combustion process. You have to, up here, you're burning petroleum coke, which is very nasty stuff for human health. But on top of that, right, so you have the product of combustion, which liberates that CO2, but you also have the chemical transformation. And so all these methods are ways of trying to reduce the carbon footprint, either by sequestering during some part of the processing by chemical means, or in actually just reducing the amount of cement, conventional Portland cement that is needed in the end product. and which is what the Romans did, and actually their cement was better than ours.
Okay, well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next is Sophia Wang, followed by, Abhi Meyer, followed by Hoi Poon. I'm sure I butchered that name, but welcome, Sophia.
Hi, as you guys know, my name is Sophia Wang. I am a student at Monte Vista High School, and I'm also with Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. And again, I would like to thank you guys all for passing such strong all-electric reach codes. As you all know, we are in the middle of a climate crisis, and as others have already said, education is vital. As the city of Cupertino adopts new climate-friendly laws, it is important to educate our citizens about these laws. Consider the all-electric reach codes, for example. Information about what this entails and what modifications for new homes would be very good to educate citizens about. For example, consider induction stovetops, which are cheaper and more cost-effective than gas stovetops. However, many citizens are not aware of the benefits of these stoves. Every single member of the City Council has recognized the importance of education in the climate crisis, and we do too. I know that the city has already been working on the issue and holding a few workshops. If you are willing to put community education on your work program, we would be very happy to partner with you to further this effort. We recently received a grant from SVCE to fund community education and outreach, and many community members are also interested in partnering with us, the PTA, for example. We've already spoken with Mayor Scharf last year, and he is very interested. Ultimately, in this fight against climate change, it's very important that we work together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next, you know who you are. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Just AJ, okay. Oh, it's AJ, okay. Sorry. You should have just written AJ.
Hello, Mayor and Council members. My name is Abhimanyu Jayaraman, or AJ, and I'm a student at Cupertino High School and a member of the Cupertino Youth Climate Action Team. I'm here today to speak to you about summer student sustainability internships, which would be a program for students to get involved with city government under an internship program working towards climate-related issues. As we have seen, the city has recently passed numerous policies such as reach codes that relate to the climate, and a great way to assist city staff and assist the city overall in moving to the goals set by these policies would be student internships, in which students would be able to both assist city staff members and gain real-life experience in education in the fields of public policy and civic engagement, all while working towards something they care about. We've seen programs and internships like this set up in cities such as San Francisco and San Jose, and these have allowed numerous youth to gain access to experience while working under a real internship. And this enables students to gain very valuable experience out of working towards their beliefs and goals. These sorts of internships would benefit both the city and the youth of the community, which is why I ask you, the board, to consider the implementation of student sustainability internships. Thank you.
So are the internships in San Jose and San Francisco, are those paid internships or volunteer internships?
They range from a variety. There were multiple programs, and some range from paid to volunteer, but both provided very valuable experience for youth, and both ended up getting a lot of participants and resulting in a lot of education and experience.
Okay, so maybe the city manager can look into this.
This is on our agenda for this week's staff meeting.
Okay, great. And yeah, if it's a budget item as well. All right, thank you.
Okay.
And next we have,
Thank you very much.
Last but not least, Hoi Poon, welcome. Are you a student too?
I am retired. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for the youth to get involved with different city programs. Our youth in Cupertino and of course Santa Clara County have been involved in the past 6 months to advocate for climate policies. They also advocate for better transit with VTA. I don't know if you heard, but VTA recently declared climate emergency, which is the first transit agency in the country to declare that. Oops, sorry. Let me turn on the phone. So it is a big deal because they also want to partner with us to organize a youth climate summit. And our youth across the county are also working on advocating to shift from highway funding project to improve public transit, which city of Cupertino has been greatly impacted based on my conversation with the city manager, that bus routes has been cut. So I think that it's really important for the city council members and the mayor to consider supporting youth efforts. And we could potentially shift $500 million funds from highway expansion spending on Lawrence Expressway, which is outdated model, and towards transit that will solve a lot of problems in Santa Clara County. And there are tax measures in the works, and those are very regressive and potentially expensive, and I don't know if they will solve all these short-term issues. But anyway, our youth are very interested in partnering with the city, conduct public educations and community outreach. As the youth mentioned earlier, they actually wrote a grant and received a grant from Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And it's not a lot of money, it's a small amount, but they can be used for two things. One is community outreach, public education. It can be used to pay for food and materials, and then none of them is getting paid to do any of these amazing work. And two is to use, to organize second annual Climate Action Summit so that more youth can be engaged in the climate actions. So thank you for your time.
Okay, so I did get one more card here. Jennifer Griffin.
Good evening, City Council. I'm sorry I was late. The power was out in Santa Cruz again because of the high winds yesterday. I think that it's very important that we start looking at some of the issues in terms of the new legislation from the housing bills. I'm particularly talking about the ADUs. When we're talking about strategic planning, when we have bills like these that have been signed at the state level, the cities are left to struggle to try to implement them. I believe that the City Council is going to be talking about the ADU issue in 2 weeks. It's very important. We discovered that the writers of the ADU bill allow them to be 4 feet from the property lines. That is, 5 feet is the minimum in the city right now for detached homes. Allowing ADUs in condo complexes and in apartment complexes is sloppy legislation. It is San Francisco based. It is not thinking about the rest of the state and the people who live in condo communities, HOAs, seniors live there. They are having to allow their neighbors to put in ADUs in their garages. Now, this is pathetic legislation. This is the type of thing that the cities are having to spend money on implementing it, and we did not even get a chance to vote on the HOA, on the ADUs. I believe the ADU laws are unconstitutional, they're illegal, and I think eventually they will be thrown down. But I don't think we should be quick to implement them. Yes, it may be law because the governor signed it, but it is sloppy legislation that endangers people. 4 feet from a property line, give me a break. 5 is bad enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And that's the last card that I have. So we are on to item 2 on the agenda.
Sorry, I have
What?
more question. For the last page of the presentation, under public-private partnership, for ongoing strategic partnership with nonprofits. So I'm just wondering, ongoing, who will be working with the staff? Which commission or will be working with the staff on this? And what's the current process? What do we envision this ongoing process will be?
Where's that? Oops. I know, but I want that detail.
Right now it says we have some talk to West Valley Community Services. It seems that's it.
I think whatever commission is, it looks like there's a variety of nonprofits we're considering, and it would be whatever commission covers that subject matter. For example, the library, there's a library nonprofit we'd be looking to work with, and so we work with the Library Commission. For YMCA, we might be working with Parks
Yeah,
and
I
Rec.
know a lot of ideas were generated at the time. And then right now it seems we have only talked to West Valley Community Services. So I'm just wondering ongoing, who will be responsible for carrying this out and looking at what nonprofits to outreach for? Should maybe a commission be working with the staff to continue to carry this
It's
out?
largely the Director of Parks and Recreation.
So, because
The
then
Parks and Recreation Department has the most interaction on a daily basis with
With
the public
the
and the
nonprofit.
nonprofit agencies, whether they're human services agencies, such as those that also work with West Valley, or the schools, or some of the related nonprofits, the sports leagues and things like that. Unfortunately, in an interim role, I'm not the appropriate person to do that.
Mhm.
I have put it on the list for the incoming director, when that's selected, of one of their key things to look forward to for next year. It's hard. I can't go out and become the face and start building a partnership when I'm going to be leaving, but it's something that it would be key for the next person coming in to the role. But Parks and Recreation Department and Commission would be the appropriate place.
So it seems right now this item is still very vague. To make that an ongoing, it might disappear. So do we have a specific goal? Do we have, if we don't have even a person who might be, or even a commission, maybe if a commission is an item a commission is keeping an eye on, maybe every year we can review, okay, who are we partner with, and do we need more? Maybe it's not just Parks and Rec, it could be other areas. There are so many nonprofits in different areas. It could be technology nonprofit, it could be
This is a
other
core
things.
part of the Parks and Recreation Director's responsibilities. So when we have a new director on board, this would be an important component of their work going forward, with the variety of nonprofits and dealing with the commissions that they oversee.
Okay, so I think Cupertino Historical Society is also mentioned as one of the nonprofit, right?
Yep. Okay, can we move on to goal setting?
Yeah.
John?
I would
Kind of
just
vague.
toss out the comment, when we did the commission interviews and we entertained the ideas of maybe another one or two commissions, this would sure seem like to me to be something very different than Parks and Rec. And I would say that to me it speaks out as community services, and community services that are nonprofit based, or community services that would provide these outside agencies like West Valley Community Services being able to provide services for our community. The commission then would be, tasked with trying to identify which ones are best for our community and making those recommendations to us. So again, I just see it as being very different than Parks and Rec.
It wasn't meant to say that all the nonprofits are Parks and Rec related, but they have the gravity of them so far, right? Most of the nonprofit connections are through that department, is all that meant. Thank you. Thank you.
So one more comment. As we see that there are many items, work program items that start out as a work program, they move on into operation, but then some of them probably a commission should be a place where every year that they get involved with deciding what to do, and for example, arts festival program, for example, the nonprofit public-private partnership, this kind of thing. I think TIC is working on something too. So I'm wondering for the work program for commissions, besides the work program for each year, probably each commission also should have a category of ongoing operational items that they look at every year. And right now it's not clear. I think some commissions have those, some don't. So if we have also a table like this for ongoing operations for each commission that they should be in charge of maybe reviewing, that would be great.
And my comment on the public and private partnerships is on line 4 for the Small Business Development Center and the Visitor Center. I think that there's a natural synergy between this for the Visitor Center part of it and the Cupertino merchandising. And that's specifically called out in the description under the project objective. The Visitor Center should have a retail component to sell city-branded merchandise. And so if there's some kind of cooperation point, perhaps kind of grounded in maybe online availability, something that's more of a virtual space as opposed to one that is a physical location. Because if you don't have a physical location, like this is not going to go forward. I also have a question with regard to the estimated total number of staffing hours. If 200 hours is being spent on this over the course of the year, I'd really like to understand what the outreach is, because that's a significant amount of staff time. And I have worked on this in the past. I worked on this when I was at the chamber. I worked on this early on in my first term on council. And I'd really like to see this happen. We have a number of developments coming up. If there's an interface with the various developers of these spaces, great. But I would just request some kind of ongoing knowledge by council as to how these hours are being spent.
Sure.
All right, thanks.
No problem. Okay, we are going to move on to goal setting because contrary to what the calendar says, I really meant for this session to last until about 7:30.
Schedule, so let's move on.
Yes, we are. No, not 10:30, 7:30, 7:30. And so I have spent the last 8 months, maybe for council it seems like I've been here for 8 years, but I've been here for 8 months, and the goals that I've come up with as a recommendation to you are just through our conversations and what you're telling me is important to you, whether it's at a council meeting, whether it's during our one-on-ones. I've just kind of compiled them all in my head and come out with, and conferred with staff, of course, and come up with these broad categories. Now, keep in mind, these are going to be a very high-level goal setting. Last year, I watched the goal setting, and I felt like, as I mentioned before, that it was more like project selections rather than goal setting. So we're going to go to the 30,000-foot view, and what'll happen after you've set your goals is in the next council meeting, you will adopt your goals, and then the following special session, staff will come back with a proposed work program underneath each one of those goals. So that's the idea for the next couple steps. Yes, sir?
Okay, proceed.
Yes.
There's no attachment for this, right?
No, it's just my presentation.
Okay.
It's not, no. So basically, overarching goals, the one thing I would say is goals of this nature don't tend to change from year to year, because they're long-ranging goals, sometimes taking a decade or more to finish. Certainly transportation, as an example, is a long-term item for the city to help address it for our community and hopefully connect regionally so we can help solve some of the problems. So I propose these 5 in not any particular order. Some similar to last time's, but certainly areas of focus that you all have spoken to me about off and on and through the things that you're focused on during council meetings and some of the actions you've taken. Again, not in any particular order. Public engagement and transparency, I came up with like a mission or description of that particular goal. I won't read it to you, but if it resonates with you, please let me know, and if it doesn't, also let me know any edits or adjustments you might have to this.
Sustainability. Affordable housing.
I think I would toss out affordable housing, but in the broader scheme, housing, increasing housing, at all levels. I mean, this is one specific one, but I think we need to be looking at the bigger picture.
So maybe just housing in general, and with a sub-bullet for affordable?
Could be, but something so that it's more inclusive,
I would support that. I think housing at all income levels is a good goal, because we have a lot of market rate jobs here, right?
Absolutely. Yes, and we can change that one to housing, and then maybe say some subcomponents on that.
Well, if we can, our big shortage is affordable and moderate housing. There's sufficient housing that no one can afford. So can we have some emphasis on affordable and moderate?
Well, what about just moving affordable down to the last clause so that it states something like including affordable housing and addressing homelessness?
That seems like a great idea.
Okay.
But I appreciate the mayor's thought about moderate, because, the goals that we get from the state on BMR are low and very low, and we work to address those. But I think the missing middle, the kind of housing that teachers can qualify for, is a big, big hole here. And so I wouldn't mind actually being explicit about that in some way.
So what I'm hearing is for this one, we're going to make this more explicit with regard to affordable and moderate housing.
But I think definitely the difficulty for people with moderate income to afford housing in this area is a big issue, but it's an issue that's because of the wider income inequality, the rising higher income people, while the lower income, the stagnant income for people with low income and moderate income. So this is not really a housing problem. This is a structural financial problem. A healthy society shouldn't need to subsidize people with moderate income for housing, but we are forced to because there is a lack of transit. Because it used to be that people at least would be able to commute to more affordable areas. A lot of teachers who don't initially live in Cupertino, and they don't initially live in Palo Alto. Not every community, especially small cities, will be able to have housing that's for all income levels. That's just the nature of different cities. And now, this is not just a housing problem. This is if we are trying to solve a problem and only talk about housing, we are not solving the problem.
Well,
it's a Band-Aid.
Well, I agree with
So
Councilmember Chow,
transit
but the state
both.
is going to come in quickly to do exactly what you said should not be done. It's true. In the past, transportation allowed you to live where you could afford and the kind of housing you desired. But what's going to come down, I was just at the ABAG meeting, is they will look at cities with good schools and high-tech jobs and say, you must build somehow this subsidized moderate and low-income housing. And as to where the money comes from, does it come from developers that build that housing as part of a project that has high-cost housing? They're not saying. So, while I would agree that it's more of a transit issue, I don't think the state is going to agree with that assessment.
Yeah, but I think as a goal, as a city, our goal has been in the past to keep job housing balanced. I think that has been our goal, and that's not expressed here. We have tried to be responsible, to not approve excessive offices.
Right.
Right.
And you're
we
exactly
have-
right.
We have been trying to advocate for more transit, that we are refusing to accept express lane on 85. I think that has been the essential thing that makes Cupertino different from probably
Right.
other cities.
And despite the fact that we've been responsible and not rezoning for more commercial at the expense of our finances, to be honest, because more commercial is more profitable to the city, and that's why cities like San Francisco and Santa Clara and San Jose are approving the projects with the huge imbalances of jobs and housing. But I was at this meeting on Friday. Even though we don't follow in the footsteps of the less responsible cities, our undeserved reputation is that we are doing that.
I know, that's why I think as a goal of the city, we need to talk about not just housing, but office and housing, because that's
So
what
balance.
other people are
Right.
not talking about.
We will work it in
Yeah, work
some
that
language
in,
about
please.
balance.
Yeah.
And you've got the document that I wrote.
And the
You
lack
can
of
take stuff out of
transit,
that.
the lack of meaningful transit to reach affordable areas adds to the problem. And that's what people are not talking about either. So as a city goal, that's something we need to lead to talk about.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to try to
Root cause.
consolidate.
Okay.
Can you back up one to housing again? So something like contributing meaningfully and in a balanced manner to the housing inventory in support of our community needs, including affordable housing and moderate income level housing, and addressing homelessness. And I'll go ahead and write that down and email it to you, Deb.
Great.
And can we talk about not exercise, not worsen the situation with adding excessive office?
I think we could achieve the goal, the council's goal, by saying something about a balanced way, because I would like to keep the goals kind of positive
Yeah.
and not focused on we don't want, right? Keep
But
it
this
positive,
is something
balanced.
positive that we have been responsible for. It has been the council's goal.
Right, that is true, and Vice Mayor Paul's brought that up, and I've brought that up in public, and we always get in trouble when we explain that that's what we're doing. We need kind of better PR for that, I think.
And do you want something specific in this language that Vice Mayor Paul is writing up?
Something that maybe that says that we strive to maintain our jobs housing balance to prevent
We can even
the
put a
negative
sub-bullet.
implications
Sure,
of
we'll
not
work it
doing
in.
that.
We will work that in. Okay? Any more comments on this one? It's good feedback, thank you. Transportation.
So is the Hyperloop almost finished, or how is that coming?
You told me the transporter was the
Okay.
primary, the priority.
Because 2 years ago, everyone was sure the Hyperloop was like under construction already.
I heard Mountain View or Milpitas are looking at some personal rapid transportation. That's kind of like a pod system. I don't know if it's a reality or not.
It's probably Mountain View.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, more
Oh, yeah,
specific.
towards Google campus.
Yeah, more specifically, they collected and are collecting their progressive head tax with an intention to build a public means for people to get between North Bay Shore and the train. What they've now, I mean, the mode they've decided on, they looked at all these funky pod car solutions that none of them qualify for federal funding or matching funding or anything yet. It always seems to be like 6 months or a year away. What they did do is say they were going to create a segmented, so separated autonomous lane, sort of like we've created a barrier in the street for bikes. And then they're going to allow autonomous vehicles. Could be bus-sized, or it could be shuttle-sized, right? Or maybe in the middle, in the dead of night, maybe it's just an autonomous passenger car to move between the train station and North Bay Shore. That's my understanding of what they've done to handle this last mile connection to their train, to Caltrain, a station in downtown Mountain View.
anything else on transportation?
So I've had on my list for quite a while that, we need some, as a goal, some improvements on the local congestion, make traffic move a little bit better. I think there are some small things that can be done. Signal timing on De Anza Boulevard near 280 seems like a real place that could use some help. Things that just block a lot of the flow, and so make that a goal. I think it actually...
That might be better as a work program item, a specific item, because it's supposed to be a big overarching goal. Right? What do you want to do with
Okay,
transportation?
I'll just make this last comment though.
Sure.
I think it also combines the quality of life. I mean, if we're stuck and we're not able to go anywhere, I mean, that is affecting our quality of life.
Almost
So,
all of these, right? They all fold into quality of life, which coincidentally might be your last goal, perhaps.
Yeah.
So when I kind of thought about this one, there's a focus on, for example, doing something at the sports center, making sure City Hall is something we address so we can continue to provide services for all the community. So
Can you back up one
Sure.
slide?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As much as I think things should be safe, I think that's kind of a given. I don't know if that word is necessary in that sentence. We wouldn't be doing something unsafe, hopefully.
right?
So, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to some of our infrastructural priorities in areas where perhaps there isn't as much, focus on safety for bicyclists, for instance. And so one of the things that we've done in the last 5 years is to consider, things on the roads such as separated bike lanes that could actually help guide our development in bike infrastructure. So I think safe is really not something that's speaking to the stuff that we're putting in the future, but speaking more to the things that are there now that we'd like to help remedy and make safer. So I think that word actually does have something of a function. But I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Anything we put in should necessarily be safe.
If you want to leave safe in there, that's fine, I guess.
Okay, so when I read this, I feel like this multimodal transportation system, that term, has been used to promote usually only more bike paths. But then when we talk about transportation problems in Cupertino, I think usually Cupertino, our goal is more mass transit. At least we want to strive for that. Mm-hmm. And also parking. Whenever some people, any project or VTA takes away parking, it impedes our ability to use transit. Because if they reduce parking to the Caltrain or to the BART station, we cannot even get there. And we will have to drive. So I'm wondering, can we somehow address these unique needs of Cupertino? That's not just a general multimodal transportation system.
Something specific about public transit or?
Encouraging mass transit
okay.
and because the reality is people do need parking. Like SB 50, they take away parking from transit-oriented development. Mm-hmm. But the reality of this area is even if you live right next to transit, you still need a car to go to many places, to go to the hospital, schools. So that's a reality. So I think
we can pull out, the reason I put multimodal is it really means bike, ped, cars, mass transit, all types of transportation modes. However, if people are more comfortable and we want to pull out mass transit, I certainly can do that.
No, I think you can actually add to this, and it's just a reflection of what we've already been doing as a group. I don't really see conflicts in that, and so you could just after community put a comma and advocating for effective and equitable mass transit in the greater area. Yep. I think if we, make that part of our transit and transportation mission statement, then that's a reflection of what our priorities already are.
Sure.
So one reason people don't use mass transit is because it's so slow. You don't have anything in here.
Efficient.
Yeah, efficient. Is that the same as fast? I mean, they're talking about spending all that money on BRT, but it's still not going to be fast. And so people still will not use it. So is fast somehow baked into the word efficient, or?
I put effective in the second part of it.
Okay.
We could do effective, we could add in mass transit. Those are all good adds.
And I think I don't know whether it fits realistic parking requirements, because parking is a part of transportation system when we rely on cars. Otherwise, people will be circling around, searching for cars. Another thing, when someone pointed out, is if you have apartments without parking, people are not going to buy electric cars because they'll have to park on the street. Where are they going to charge?
Sure. So I'll grant you that all those things are important, but from a high-level goal thing, I mean, to me, this captures. And I think fast is part of efficient, right? We think of time efficiency, dollar efficiency, right? We're not going to take a system that costs us an arm and a leg.
And these are intentionally vague.
These
so
are
I think
these
that's
are
good.
intentionally very high level. So parking and charging your car, right? In EV are all part of it.
We may want to put something
Right.
in the board
Well,
program
But
about
I'm okay
realistic
leaving this
parking
very high goal because
requirements?
we are in the next meeting, right? We're going to get down.
Right.
We're going to get down one level to talk about some specifics related to this goal. So I rather than adding a lot of complexity to each of these,
Right,
I mean,
yeah, I
I'm
agree
good
with
with it. I mean, yes,
Councilman
we'd add,
Sings.
if you want to call out mass transit, then I'd want to call out pedestrian, bikeway. I'd want to call out, some warranted improvements in how we move personal vehicles around, right? So, but I think, yes, parking. So we could get in a whole can of worms, but I would suggest leaving it high
Right.
level.
I appreciate Deb keeping this high level, and we will get into the
We'll get a little more
nitty-gritty of
weedy
it.
next time.
Yeah,
Right.
next time.
So next time, nitty-gritty will be specific goals for next year, right?
That's what
Or
we're
are we
doing.
going to
Right.
have
These are your
like
goals for next year.
extra bullet point under each goal?
So here's what's going to happen. We will take whatever adjustments all of council has recommended for these 5 goals, or actually the next one, we'll get at the end. And then what we'll do is we will edit them, and we will get them to you before the next council meeting where you're going to adopt these goals. And then from the adoption, the special meeting after that is designed to relook at your goals. Underneath there, the staff will propose more specific projects that you can see as part of the work program. And that's where you can have your input, where we're taking the commission input that we got from December to January and building it underneath your goals. Because our staff is only so big, we're going to only be able to accomplish so much of the suggested projects that have come in. Because council's going to have projects, commissions have suggested their own projects, and staff have some ideas as well. So I appreciate the adjustments to some of the goals. That's what I'm looking for is adds. We'll bring them back in as cogent a form as possible for adoption.
Okay, move on.
Okay.
I think we had to ask Mass Transit. Yeah. So clarification, are we or are we not adjusting this particular one to say mass transit or efficient or effective mass transit?
I think we should. I mean, mass transit is an important enough element of what we advocate for to, call it out. And multimodal transportation system, you don't really get a sense of, and advocating for mass transit is a very, very specific, area of transit that is extremely expensive, and if you don't call it out, then I think it's just too easy to miss.
Well, then don't just say our community, because obviously we would not have mass transit within our city. It would be
Right.
to
Well, I'll read it
go to
again.
other cities and throughout the
Yeah.
region.
So as currently written, and then adding and advocating for effective, equitable mass transit in the greater area would be my suggestion for adding to the end of the sentence. Something to indicate that it is
Outside,
more
that's
than
the
our
word.
community.
Regional? How about regional? The region? Or did you say the area?
I think the region is good. I hadn't thought about that term. So instead of greater area, the region.
Everybody good with that?
Yep.
Yeah. So just to clarify, this is top level, but next time it will be an item level. We won't ever have a middle level where we can say that Cupertino cares about the realistic amount of parking. Just right. Because we as a community do rely on vehicle traffic.
Right now, because we don't have any access to mass transit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think even when we have mass transit, the day when we won't rely on vehicle traffic, even when we have mass transit, is very, very unlikely.
It's far away. I would suggest to you
even
that
Palo Alto people with Caltrain, they rely on vehicle transportation. So, I mean, yeah. So, it sounds like we won't ever have the middle level of detail that I'm pointing out, even next meeting, right?
So what I would say is that if we're going to deal with parking as part of the transportation goal, we'll want to look at work program items that maybe outlay where you would have parking. For example, you would have something related to the library expansion on parking, and we want to call that out separately as a project. But you know,
yeah, but my point is not even within our city limit. When they remove parking to a VTA station, that affects us. So I think these are goals that we would want to advocate, that when the regional agency design new transportation goals, they should not ignore our community needs. So the reason I'm trying to make this specific to Cupertino needs, because multimodal transportation, that's a term used by the whole state. So I think when we set the goal for Cupertino, we should set it so that it fits, it fulfills our needs.
Right.
That's separate from other cities.
Right, but come way up here. Even in Cupertino, isn't our transportation system multimodal? Cars, bikes, peds, and hopefully mass transit someday, or some sort of bigger transportation
Our
system.
shuttle.
It's the shuttle, right?
Yeah.
So that's multimodal, even in Cupertino.
Yeah, I don't know if we have to put parking in our goals. I mean, that's almost in our legislative platform. That
So can we move on with that? Because I don't hear anybody.
I would favor moving on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, next. So almost everything else I've heard from council in conversations is about the genuine feeling that we need to make sure that we provide a good environment and continuing health and well-being for our Cupertino community. Whether that be, for example, redoing the sports center, revitalizing or continuing the wonderful programs we have at the senior center. So this is where all of those other things would fall. Almost every other CIP project I can think of probably falls in this area, pretty much. But wanted to get your thoughts on all of this.
So what Councilmember Chow has stated, it seems like we've got the high-level goals and we have the work plan, but we don't have what's in between the kind of sub-goals that guide the work plan. And are we not going to do those, or what?
I wasn't planning on it, but if we think we need sub-goals underneath these, we can take some of these.
Well, we wouldn't be able to have that ready by the next meeting, though.
No. But we can probably do is pull from this conversation, we pull out little bullets that kind of signify sub-goals, because that's essentially some of the rewrites of these this bullet ends up being those things, those sub-goals.
Right. I mean, I just don't want to see our next meeting, we're going to get bogged down for hours and hours defining those sub-goals. So
I'll
maybe
take a
if
hit
you
at
could
it.
come up with some
I will.
in advance after you, in our one-on-ones,
I can
we
do
could
that.
get them on here.
Absolutely, I can do that. Okay.
So one thing I'd like to point out, I think for quality of life, it means many different things for different people. I think in Cupertino specifically, quality of life also means the different stores, retail center, the different services that even medical clinics we have access to. That affect a lot if they are all not in the city. With the traffic situation, we have to always go drive elsewhere. So that's affect our quality of life. It's a retail, commercial mix, service.
Right. So those could be in the sub goals that you could.
Yeah.
I hope you're taking notes here.
Yes.
And
Right. Air quality.
Air quality.
Yeah, we could put some sub-bullets around all of those.
So what does quality of life mean to you? What other things?
Yeah, I mean that it is very vague.
Yeah.
But
I think they're
intentionally.
I think probably you're uncomfortable with the vagueness because maybe last year's goal setting was a little more down here. And so I'm wondering if we break down some sub-goals out of this, what are you thinking it would help? Would it help, you think, guide what's in the work program?
Right. I mean, Rod was mentioning air quality,
Yeah,
and then
air
there's,
quality,
there's
noise.
things like the airplane noise, exactly, and
So subsets of
availability
this
of
that
parks.
you wouldn't necessarily get.
Yeah, even traffic falls
Traffic
into quality
is,
of life.
But then we already have traffic.
Right. We already
so-
have that separate.
Almost
Pub-
everything comes back to technical
public
high five.
safety, I think.
Yeah.
That's,
Public safety.
You want that as another goal?
That
Well, I mean, that's
that's
a
a
quality of-
safety,
that's a
safety,
sub-thing of quality of
safety, city, right? People want to feel safe.
Yeah, of
when
course.
Especially when they decide where to live. Many people choose Cupertino because we have been a very safe city. Well, at least mostly safe.
Right.
So-
That could be even a separate goal, not a sub goal. I think.
Public safety?
Yeah, public
Public
safety.
safety. Separate
goal?
Yeah. When people choose a place to live, they're looking at parks, schools, public safety, those, climate. Those are all, things that they look at.
Come up with it. We'll add public
Yeah.
safety. So 6
We
goals?
don't really have schools or teen services for teens and families. I think,
So that
like
would
Parks
be-
and Rec, our Parks and Rec, fantastic Parks and Rec program, is just really strength of us. Like senior center, all that program is our strength. So that falls under quality of life.
Or is that a
Or
separate
is that
recreation?
separate?
I
Because-
think Parks and
I
think it's-
Recreation is so such a large thing that it could be its own.
A lot of Parks and Rec will fall into quality of life. Not all communities have such a great set of programs for seniors, for example. And then going back to the schools, certainly we can always support the schools, but it would not be one of our top-level goals,
Right.
right? The schools have their own goals.
Something maybe about supporting all ages. I know we're age friendly, but we also have a lot of programs for children as well. Some people say we should be doing more for seniors as our community ages.
It's possible.
You know-
Okay.
Deb, when you first were starting, you were saying that these are goals that would likely not change from year to year. And one of the things I was thinking and understanding that is it's really would be defined as to how council would give us the input for the future year's work plan as to what would be, really important as those sub-goals that we would be focusing on for that following year. And that would ebb and flow depending on what was going on in the community.
sub-goals might.
Right.
That's up
And that would manifest itself in that work plan for that year. Because I think if you just my opinion, if you get into these sub-goals, what's the life of those? And how is that relative
It
to
gets
the
very
work plan?
complex.
So I do see value in having the higher level goals and then the work plan effort that we will do.
Well, I'll do my best to see if I can construct something that works for everybody, but
Yeah.
still doesn't leave out things so that you're comfortable with them.
Maybe over time, sub-goals might be different for different set of council members, right? But maybe the top level goals will stay the same, but sub-goals might evolve.
Possible. Let me work through it and see if I can figure it out.
happy
But
to do
yeah, I think Parks and Rec services or community services should be separate from quality of life. It's.
You don't agree? Okay.
Yeah.
Public safety should be on a quality of life.
All right, yeah, but call them out specifically if they're under quality of life.
Cool.
Call out public
'Cause it
safety,
is a big-
call out Parks and Rec. I mean, that's still vague enough to be a general goal without being too specific.
Okay.
And if we're going to do that, I would lobby for air quality for what it's worth.
Okay,
Yeah, air and noise, right?
we'll take a shot at it.
Okay, next.
Okay, so that is it. Now,
Okay.
I'm going back to our flow diagram to talk about next steps. So,
We have one public comment card coming, so before you do that, why don't we welcome Jennifer Griffin? Yeah, just go. You're the only one, so.
Good evening, City Council. I'm glad that you all were talking about this. And I think it's very good that we're having an overarching experience of the goals for the city. I'm going to start out right now. I have said before that what has happened in the last 2 years with the transportation bills, the ADU bills, the housing bills, has caused, in my mind, a constitutional crisis for California. It has affected me profoundly. I can tell you now, I have received my ballot in the mail. I will be doing it in person or mailing it. But how I am voting now and how I will vote in the future is forever changed. I cannot begin to communicate to my city officials and to my city, and I don't know if the state is listening, but what I have gone through in the last 2 to 3 years with these bills, having local control taken from us, has affected me profoundly. It will affect how I vote in this election, and it will affect how I vote in the future. I have marked my ballot already, and it is different than I would have a year ago because of the seize of local control. I will do everything possible to maintain control in my city at the city level. And I don't know if Sacramento is listening, but I think there's a lot of people in Sacramento that need to make sure that they are listening to the residents of the state. I am thinking about my state and my place in the state. What do I want in my future to look like? The future of my city. Who will I vote for? Who will I support? What do I think about what is happening? How is this changing my experience of living in my state? My state. My experience in my state is being threatened. Who is threatening it? Who is taking away my control in my city? What right do they have to take away my control in my city? Is this redefining my concept of democracy in California? Yes, it is. A non-transparent group is seizing control of the state. Please keep that in mind. When I vote in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I am voting to retain local control in my city. And I have that right because I live in a democratic society. I have lived here all of my life, and I will fight to keep it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
okay, so to do a little wrap up, this is the
But actually, what Jennifer said, maybe one of our goals needs to be something about advocating for legislation.
That would just be a way you attain your goals.
Right.
Is your
okay.
your legislative platform.
But yeah, retaining local control is a goal.
Sure.
A quick question about process here. So your flow chart has us on the 24th in a couple of weeks reviewing our proposed 2021, that is the year 20 to
Yes.
the year 21 city work program. How is that initial draft being generated? Is that just something that's going to come off of 1920 and get updated?
So what we're going to do is, you saw many items some items this earlier. that are not going to complete this year, either because they're multi-year or because they're canceled or on hold or something.
Okay.
So what we will do is put that up so that council can see that next to all of the commission proposals, staff proposals, and maybe you all have your own ideas as well.
Right. So it seems like that would be our opportunity to go ahead and add individual items, because we're not
Yes.
finalizing the proposed work program until several weeks later.
Correct, correct.
On the 17th of March.
Right, and we will attempt to make that kind of orderly as well. So yes, that
Right.
is your opportunity, that next light blue box.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, good process. Thanks for creating the flow chart. And I know we've gone over this. You know, you showed this to me once a couple weeks ago, and I'm glad that you put the commission input in there.
Yeah.
That was a good
Yeah,
idea.
and so the idea is that you can see by the time we get to June, everything will be integrated into a budget and everything will be done. I'm going to keep these flow charts in front of council so you know where we are in each step of the way, because it's a long process and it's easy to get lost in. So that's what we're going to do, and thank you for your time.
So a question. So for community members who would like, or council members or commissioners who would like to propose items for the city to work on, when is better
So-
date for them to do by, and how?
So they, from December through the early part of January, all the commissions had, well, maybe before that, they had their meetings with public attending. So all those commission items are coming in. And then I would suppose you could get work program items suggested during that meeting as well.
Right, we always do.
Yeah, and then we'll contemplate council suggestions. All the suggestions will come in that day, which is why you're not going to adopt a work program for 2021 until a bit later.
Okay, so the members of the public, are we going to email out this new process to do an email blast?
It's posted. It's posted and should have the same notifications as anything else we post citywide.
So someone who subscribed will get a
Yes, ma'am.
notification,
Yep.
right? Okay. I have a question going back to an earlier item. For the community garden improvement, and it's marked here that it will be moved to under CIP. But I think the satellite garden is not exactly just CIP. It's maybe also policy on how to administer it, right?
Yes, that's correct. And when we go to council,
The next meeting.
yeah, the 18th, we're going to give an update on the satellite community gardens. But I think a lot of that's what's happening now, if I'm correct, is getting the policies set up.
I'm just saying it shouldn't be removed from this list.
Well, I think the hope is that we'll have direction by next fiscal year to where it'll be a CIP, and then if it's funded, we'll just be doing it and implementing it.
So the
Okay.
portion about the community garden that is already identified and in place and being revamped, that's going to be a CIP project. The satellite gardens piece that's kind of budding out of this process is going to be its own item for next board program.
Okay.
And the Park and Rec Commission is already starting to work on that.
So just for clarification, has the council approved the gardens at McClellan as
No.
a CIP project?
That will come to the
It's
next
coming.
meeting.
18th, February 18th.
Yeah, I mean, it is,
Okay.
it's funded, but we're bringing back.
We're going to discuss the
all-
terms
all
because
the
there were
costs.
some issues we had with
Yeah,
public
right,
access
sure.
and so forth.
Exactly.
Okay, all
Okay.
right, thank you.
So one more thing I'd like to mention. I visited the San Jose Public Library. They have, as part of the library, they have a small business center there that provide classes, but also meeting rooms of different size that people can reserve. Some are first come, first served. And yeah, so I thought that might be a, since we have a small business center here and we really don't have space, so a shared space with the library, I'm not sure if that's possible. I asked the San Jose Public Library Business Center in there is like the first in a library system. So maybe that's a possible thing we can start in Santa Clara County Library.
So,
So it's a
you serve
business
on
and
the
job
library,
career
right?
center. So they provide career services too.
Which branch of the San Jose Public Library?
The downtown one.
Downtown MLK? The
Martin
Right
Luther
Martin Luther King?
King,
Okay.
Yeah. The third floor.
Right. Yeah, I don't think our library would have the space for that.
No.
But maybe with the new
Yeah, with the new
program room,
addition.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Nice job.